Is it? It is.
Applebee's is great.
Good morning, everyone. See what's on the agenda today. Item number 1 is roll call. Paula, you want to get us started with that?
Sandino Thompson, Omar Curry,
Present.
Jonathan Dotson,
Present.
Mark Crittenbrink, and Tom Wilson.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Item number 2 is approval of the minutes from the March 9, 2016. Tom, have you had a chance to review them?
I have, and I move approval.
I second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays? None. Items 3, 4, 5, and 6 are null. Item number 7 is other businesses, ordinance amendment.
Yes, we're still waiting for Michael to come. I think you guys remember Sarah Welch from our division from last time. She's been working with Michael to create this document. It's essentially the same as you saw last time. There's been quite a bit of a kind of technical reorganizing. One issue that came up last time, Tom, was about we had language about the number and placement of curb cuts for a parking garage. We wanted to make sure that the proposed new garage, that none of those conflicted with the design of the proposed new garage, because everybody agreed that the proposed new garage was hitting all the marks. So we just took out that language altogether. We had inserted it as a regulation, and we talked about moving it to a guideline, but in the end, we felt that we had enough language about protecting the pedestrian way that we could cover any design issues with that. But that was the main thing I remembered from last time. So I covered the parking garage, entrances and exits, Michael, and I told them that there were numerous other little, minutia of reorganization. Are there any other points you want to
Actually, there's not numerous. There's only 3.
Oh, okay.
Depends on your perspective, I suppose. In section 3-119, where of the sign code, in your chart, it's on top of page 2. The first bullet item there has been changed from the last time we've seen this, and what it says now is that we've basically deleted the references to non-accessory signs in this section because it's all covered under the new expanded BC district standards under subsection D. So that's one. And then top of page 3 of your chart in section 4150.5. We previously had a reference to removing staff as being responsible for compiling the mailing list, and that's been changed. And then the only other thing was it's on the, page 6 of your chart, section 59-7150.1, and it's basically the third bullet down in the top box, which is basically what Lisa covered while I was away. So those are the 3 relatively minor corrections we've made since we brought this to you last, I think, in February.
And we weren't going to go through the chart unless you would like us to. We went through it in some detail last time.
I see no reason for it.
Thank you, Michael. Are there any comments from committee?
No, I think we had covered all these items previously. So do you need a motion for approval?
Yeah, it's the motion, the action for the committee is to recommend approval to the Planning Commission.
I just have a
Yeah.
couple of questions for Michael. As I read this, there's no allowance at all for an EMD sign that is non-accessory, correct?
An EMD sign that is what?
Non-accessory.
I know that we've restricted EMDs to certain uses.
I think that's correct because there's no non-accessory signs of any type.
Right. So the only way to get away with that would be through a SPUD or a variance.
Okay. And just to be clear, what exactly are the main differences between EMD 1, 2, and 3?
It's just really how much motion and animation and the rate of change of the signage in them. So level 1 is the least motion sensitive. They're pretty static signs. They don't change a lot. And then level 2, you get more change, more frequent changing of the messages. And then level 3, you get into more like animation and things like that.
Okay. Thank you. So can I entertain a motion to approve or recommend for approval?
I would move to recommend approval of the ordinance as presented today.
Second that?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No nays? Motion passes. Item number 8, Communications Administrative Approval Report. Michael?
Unfortunately, I don't have my agenda with me.
Yeah, it's some Verizon antennas and some temporary banners for the playoffs. Not a whole bunch going on this month.
I do have a question about the banner for the college that's on top of that building, UCM, UCO's music department.
They did not receive approval. I'm not aware of us approving any.
It's an old banner.
Oh, it's an old banner. Okay, okay.
That black one that's been there for...
Yeah, the one that's tattered up there on the north elevation. Yeah.
There's a time limit for these banners.
We can certainly go through the action center and have a...
It's just ripped and torn on one side.
Right.
It's just,
Yeah.
okay. Item number B, comments from planning department staff.
If you haven't already, please go online and take this survey for the preservation plan that we're working on. We're collecting lots of data on what people consider historic and how we can be proactive about protecting those things.
Will do. Anything else? Comments?
I was just going to comment on, I was brought into an email chain regarding the approved parking lot next to the Criterion that has, it sounds like, deliberately chosen not to follow code on what was proposed to us or we approved. And then basically it was to get our approval with no expectation of actually following through on the improvements that were proposed to us. So my question was how, when we see this in other places, what is the method of resolving that? And what responsibility do we have as a committee when, I think that this user has done this before with another piece of property that has remained unchanged, so.
Yeah, that owner has been cited for constructing a parking lot without a building permit and for operating the parking lot without it sounds weird to say you have to get a certificate of occupancy for a parking lot, but you do. That's what affirms its use. So they've been cited. They will continue to be cited until they come into compliance.
What type of citation, like, whoa?
I don't know the dollar amount. It puts them on notice that they need to come into compliance. But they do have, with that notice, they are given some time. It's not you have to do it tomorrow. There's some time. They do have a certificate of approval for a fully compliant parking lot. Nothing we approve, ever has to be built. But if you are going to operate it as a parking lot, then it needs to comply with the striping, landscaping, and lighting requirements, and all of that is recorded in that CA.
Is there precedence for if someone does this once or twice, if they were to come back, that you can deny merely based upon because it's being operated as a parking lot right now. Right. And he's obviously he or she has made the decision that it's cheaper for them to not improve it and pay the citation than it is to actually do what they said they're going to do. So is there a way to actually decline something based upon that or not?
Based on their reputation? Or
not reputation, but just past action.
No, we've got to consider each application on its own merits. So if someone says, I'm going to build a parking lot with, this fencing and these landscape points and all of that, then you've got to approve it based on that and can't take into consideration what might be construed as their character or anything outside of what is presented.
Or is that because the purview of the committee is the guidelines and regulations of certain sections of the code?
Right.
And like we said, he doesn't ever have to build the parking lot. He could not operate it and not have to build what was approved in the CA.
But he is operating
but if he does operate it, then he
is subject to citations.
Right.
And do those escalate, or are those just like a...
I think for that section, they're the same. I don't think they're escalating fines, but each day is a separate violation. So theoretically, the property owner could get cited every single day for this.
How do we ensure that would happen? Like once who's actually following up on something like this?
The head of code enforcement is tracking this. And I think they've committed to citing him weekly, not daily. There's a perceived limit at the court level of how many times you can actually cite somebody for the same thing without giving them a certain opportunity to relieve it.
Yeah, I don't think I'd have any problem at all if he wasn't operating it. The fact that he is operating it.
It's my understanding there's no way they can't issue a stop that order. There's not a stop work order.
Yeah, we can't essentially issue an injunction saying, don't use this as you're prohibited from using this as a parking lot. But we can cite them for failure to conform to the code.
That's an interesting statement. Now, you can keep somebody from occupying a building. Why would this be different?
This is, so I'm not sure, does he have the certificate of occupancy? I wouldn't think
No,
so.
he does not have he does not have the CFO because he does not have a permit.
So we can't go in and throw people off the property. We don't have that authority.
Do we have the ability, though, to block people from getting in? I think part of the frustration, I think, for several people is that they've had to go make improvements in order to get people to park, and then someone comes in and basically shortcuts the whole process, and it doesn't appear that we have any authority to prevent him from doing that.
As the committee?
Or just as a city, as the city.
It's a struggle to get people to conform to the code, whether it is for design regulations for Bricktown or whether it's exterior property maintenance. I mean, it's something that is an issue for the city on multiple fronts.
Yeah, I guess this comes up maybe daily in our office, that people have installed something that doesn't have a CA or doesn't otherwise comply. They get noticed, they get cited. It ultimately does get resolved. I mean, whatever is installed ultimately gets approved in a manner that is compliant with the guidelines and regulations. It takes a lot longer than anybody would like to see. It does ultimately happen. I guess I hope that's of some comfort. That I can't think of very many, if any, that are things that are perpetually non-compliant. I mean, it does get resolved. It's never as quick as the committee or staff would want to see.
Just to go back to Tom's comment, though, it's different than installing something. I think he's operating a business without a certificate of occupancy. So if someone was doing that inside of a building in Bricktown, couldn't we, in some ways, keep them from doing that? Or
yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to ask it. I don't know. You're right. You would never be allowed to occupy a building without the required sign-offs. No one's brought that up. I'm going to ask. I don't know.
Okay.
Also, we are thinking about ways with particularly CAs on parking lots if there's some language we can come up with on the face of the CA to help clarify things for the courts, to make it clear that in order to use it as a parking lot, they have to make the improvements that are shown on the approved CA plans. It's come to our attention that through the code enforcement staff that there's actually confusion by some of the people at the courts process that there's nothing written anywhere that says, well, you have to make these improvements to use it as a parking lot. Now, obviously, parking lots is one of the few CAs that we would have this problem on. Obviously, you can't start using your property as an office building until you build the office building, or as a house until you build a house. Whereas a vacant lot, it's pretty easy to go use it as a parking lot without making the improvements. And so we're thinking about if there's some way we can make it clearer for both code enforcement staff, and when it gets cited, citations are involved, and it gets elevated to the courts process, that we can make it crystal clear that the improvements are essential before the use can occur.
Okay. But Michael, there's still guidelines for parking, stall widths, depth, ADA compatibility, and all that. Does anybody check those for just a parking lot without a structure?
Yeah, that's checked that's why you need a building permit for a parking lot, because they'll check ADA and the stalls and the lighting.
And I mean, it goes back to what Tom said. You can't, whether it's a building or a parking lot, you still have a permit for either one of them. So I can build a building and occupy it, I guess, without. It doesn't make sense.
It's a great question. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer.
I mean, it just seems to me that we have had, maybe these aren't exactly the same, but there have been times when people have been have not gotten the proper permits, and the police have gone in and told people you can't do what you're doing. Seems to me H&8 may have started out with one of those issues. Just seems to me that there could be a larger enforcement issue here other than just a citation if somebody is using the property inappropriately. Just something to, I think, to take a look at.
Yeah, I even wonder on just insurance in general. If someone were to get injured on the lot without appropriate, I mean, that's a whole other mess that we open ourselves up to. Okay, that was all I had to say.
Thanks for bringing it up. My inbox is full of similar things.
Yeah, can you, do you mind just either sending an email out to us or just having comments on the next month to let us know kind of what you were able to find out on that?
Yeah, and I'm actually going to invite the code enforcement officer,
Okay.
because he can speak to all of these nuances way better than I can, because
Okay.
that's his purview.
Thank you. Any other comments? Next meeting date is May 11th, and we are adjourned.